And you're honest, you know what's going on. It's a coup d'état. It's an overthrowing of the United States democracy at the hands of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and their some red states. The more racist these red states are, as far as their government, the stronger their push for the coup d'état of the democracy is. So the coup d'état already happened. It happened at the beginning of the Trump administration when he let Elon Musk take over the payment systems. He basically launched a financial coup d'état, which is all that you need in modern times right now to start a coup d'état and control people. Elon Musk took control of the payment systems at the Treasury Department and the software, and they put their team in there. So basically, the way they are performing the coup d'état, the Republican Party is by using money, payment as a weapon. So if you don't do what they say, they'll stop payment. And they fired everyone who can, who dares to oppose them, and preemptively also, just like they did in the military. One of the first things they did was fire the Judge Advocate Generals, JAGs, and those are the people in the military who are entrusted with guarding the Constitution against illegal, unconstitutional orders by a president or people within the military. So one of the first orders of business, one of the first actions that the Trump administration did was fire a bunch of JAGs. And these people are basically, I'm not an expert, but from what I've read, they're basically like the Supreme Court of the military. And if, let's say, for example, Donald Trump says, go ahead and fire Tomahawk missiles into the governor's office at some state, he orders the military just to fire. These are the people who would be entrusted to oppose such an order, and order the people who are in charge of firing these missiles to stand down. So we've been in trouble ever since. First of all, that the coup d'état, the preparation for the coup d'état started when the United States Supreme Court allowed a president in the United States to have complete immunity, and that was enabled by Mitch McConnell and all the people, the politicians in the Republican Party who allowed the United States government to deny nominations of judges to Democratic presidents. The last excuse that they used was that it was too close to an election to allow. They just make up shit, and that's how it works in the United States government. They just made up shit. So, and people say, well, why is it that people don't see it? Well, you have about 40 years of Republican attacks on education in this nation. They've been working on it for decades, destroying public educations, making people dumb. The public education system in our nation, it's in shambles. And that is the exclusive domain and product of the Republican Party. And then the other one that really, really hurt, I mean, doesn't get any worse than manufacturing a enormously ignorant population. Now that you see the Republicans banning books everywhere, because they don't want our children to learn the history of fascism and racism and slavery and all the fucked up shit that our European ancestors, Christian European ancestors, did against our native, at least my Native American and my African ancestors. Because if you learn from the process and a systematic oppression of different people and systematic genocide and that Europeans committed, and they've committed everywhere, it's harder for people to identify it as it's happening, like it's happening right now. If you want to learn about the history of fascism, you're not going to learn it in high school, and you should. We should teach at least in the United States, we should teach our children about slavery. But it's illegal now to teach children about slavery and the systematic oppression and systematic rape and systematic, commercialization of babies, black babies. And the systematic use of black babies to fish for alligators in the South, and the rest of the atrocities committed by white Christian people against my African ancestors in the American continent. And I didn't never learn about Becerrillo, which was a Spanish war dog that my Spanish ancestors trained to hunt and disembowel my Native American ancestors in the American continent. And Becerrillo, if you look up this dog, the Spaniards made statues of this dog, and they wrote poems about this dog. Look it up. I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. And so that history, for the people who've been wanting to know what really happened, it's out there, but they don't teach it to our children. So why would you teach shit like that to children? It's like, because I don't want them to repeat it, and I want them to grow up to be people that vote for people like Donald Trump and the modern Republican Party, And I wanted to be able to recognize what a coup d'état looks like. I wanted to be able to recognize what a financial coup d'état looks like, and the steps towards totalitarian and authoritarian regimes are. Because if you teach them the history, wait a minute, say, hey, I read about that. This actually happened before. You're not going to fool me. You're a tyrant. So if you teach children the truth about history, it will be way, way harder to con them. And, and way harder to convince them that the remnants of slavery, like the Electoral College, are a good thing to still have. The reason we're having this shit about districting and all this shit and people stealing and gerrymandering is because of the remnants of the 3/5 votes rule when counting enslaved people who couldn't vote. So, you see, when I tell people, now the military say, what does that have to do with what's going on? It has, I don't know if you've been following what I've been talking to you right now. It is a process. This has been a very, very long process of getting people dumb, making them dumb, and unable to discern, and bombarding them with right-wing propaganda. The other thing that I was going to say, Ronald Reagan the conservative God, he was a scumbag. This guy was an absolute terrorist. He financed death squads, and mass murder in Central America and other places, and had military execution groups that trained extreme right-wing Central American guerrillas to topple and mass murder democratically elected regimes in Latin America. And that's why Latin America is still in the grips of chaos and financial destruction, is because the United States government covertly financed horrendous assassination and mass murder campaigns against my fellow Latin Americans. This is the result of that. People say, well, I don't have shit to do. Yeah, you do. You just didn't know it. So, I mean, Pinochet, the Chilean dictator, he was an operative of the CIA and the British clandestine services, MI6, MI6, the rest of all the clandestine services and the service of the governments of Western empires. So now the other thing that Ronald Reagan did, the Republicans did, was they abolished the Fairness in Broadcasting Act, which prohibited broadcasters and media from spreading misinformation, aka fake news. So people, the Republican Party, if you pay attention, the modern Republican Party, but even the one all the way back 40 years ago, they've been doing this for a long time. They've been spreading misinformation and lies for a long time. So now it's legal since Ronald Reagan for decades, when the Republicans made it legal to spread misinformation. The same party that bitches about fake news, they're the ones who opened the door to fake news and made it legal. That's why every time Fox News gets sued, Fox News goes to their the truth. Hey, nobody in their right mind believes the shit we say because we're just here for entertainment. We're not an actual news organization. We're just an entertainment network. Meaning they're a bullshit fake news outlet. That's what they are. They're racist, white supremacist propaganda network. And they have one or two, actual journalists who confront the rest of the lies, but it's a fucking show. It's a show. So that's why they got sued, and they lost because, they caused a bunch of damage to with their lies. They still causing damage, and they're going to continue to cause damage because it's a business. So now the military part of the coup is taking speeding up. The first part was they tried it. They wanted to see how the authorities would react when Donald Trump ordered his followers to attack on his behalf, attack the Capitol, January 6th, 2021. And it's like when a pack of wolves is testing lions, they're predators, they're testing the one, they surround it and they attack until they learn which one is, they surround their prey and they learn which one is the best way to attack. So that was a try run, and he forgave all those, or commuted the sentences of over 1,500 people who attacked the United States Capitol and staged a violent coup d'etat on behalf of Donald Trump. He ordered them there, and told them to fight like hell, and refused to call the National Guard. And then he blamed Nancy Pelosi for not activating the National Guard, saying, oh, I have no authority of the National Guard. And lo and behold, he ordered the National Guard, into Washington, D.C. just a few days ago. You see, now West Virginia, before that, he's ordering attacks on his political opponents, openly calling for arrests of his political and incarceration of his political opponent. He's openly saying that, and then not only saying that, sending the National Guard into Democratic strongholds. So he did it in Los Angeles. He's already invaded Los Angeles. He's attacked civilian places, parks, just openly sending military personnel, Marines, and National Guard into civilian spaces like parks and schools, and using the helicopters and shit on little kids' schools, and and going into workplaces, and just staging checkpoints, illegal, unconstitutional checkpoints. They just pull you over because you look like me, and you got to prove that you're here in the United States legally. And even if they don't like it, we'll still arrest you until you can prove it. So now other states are joining in sending their National Guard. Florida is already deputizing state law enforcement agents for federal attack on immigrant communities. That's what they're doing. They're attacking us. I'm not an immigrant. I'm Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. We're born citizens. But we're familiar, if you study the history of Puerto Rico. The United States invaded Puerto Rico in 1898, bombed the shit out of us, and installed military dictatorship for about 50-some-odd years. And even now, we have zero representation in Congress, and we're an iron fist by the United States government, with a 7-member dictatorial board. They call it Financial Control Board. Is nothing more than a pillaging board. They've been stealing the retirement funds from all our Puerto Rican workers to pay the illegal debt issued by Wall Street vultures and their complicit governments in Puerto Rico. They just, they support the most corrupt ones, and that's who they get. So they're just financial hitmen. But now they're doing it to the United States. They're doing it to governments in the United States, openly attacking, sending military forces, United States military forces, to invade cities that are run by Democratic people under the guise of, there's too much crime. And nothing of the sort is true. As a matter of fact, the crime is down in these cities. And if you really want to go, now West Virginia, one of the most racist, if not the most racist state. Yeah, they're in competition with Kentucky and a couple other states, Texas. They're sending the West Virginia National Guard to attack Washington, D.C., to occupy Washington, D.C. under the guise of an state of emergency. There was no state of emergency in Washington, D.C. This is an intimidation and a coup d'etat of Washington. And they're just yesterday or the day before, when the governor of California said, enough is enough, we're going to fight fire with fire. You guys want to redistrict in the middle of the game or change the rules, we're going to do it too. And let's see how you like that. So, but now they're pushing all this is, don't think it's just that the government in West Virginia decided we're going to do it our own. No, this is orders coming straight from Donald Trump and his Nazis it's like, hey, go ahead and put more pressure on this shit. If they really wanted to use the National Guard to help the states that are most affected by crime, by serious crime, they will send it to Louisiana, to the Speaker of the House's, district, which has a 600% 600% higher murder rate per capita than DC. 600% higher than DC. Mike Johnson, his district. If they really wanted to go after, okay, we're gonna send a, but they're not doing that. It's not like the states are asking for it. Say, hey, we need help. We need help because we're being overrun by gangs or murderers or blah blah blah. That's not the case. Crime is actually down. This is what it is. It's a coup d'etat, and they're attacking Democratic-run states. People, they want to. You want to call it what you want to call it. It is what it is. What it is a coup d'etat. United States democracy. What's going to happen? People say, what's going to happen? What's going to happen now is they're going to keep pushing, and come the November 2026 elections, a bunch of this, they're going to lose control. The Republicans, they're going to lose control of the. They're going to lose control of the House, of the government, but they're not. I mean, if they're not allowed to redistrict, the only way they can win is by cheating. Okay, and if they are not allowed to cheat, if they don't find a way to steal the House and the Senate, and they lose on the votes, what's going to happen is they're going to try to steal it. Outright military theft of the, and they won't accept the loss, and that's going to cause civil unrest. People going to riot, you know. And when that happens, that's good. They're doing it on purpose, so they can say, hey, you see, these people are rioting, and we're going to activate the Insurrection Act, and we're going to suspend the Constitution indefinitely. So that's what's coming. But the coup d'etat has already been performed. Pay attention to what they did. You know, they hold. Nobody's. People say, okay, we know all that. Okay, let's say you say, okay, we know all that. What do we do? What do we do? What can we do to stop it? I think the Democrats are playing Potsy, other than a few. Other than Gavin Newsom and Murphy and a few others, they need to call for a national emergency and do a stop. Just take to the streets and stop everything. Not right away, because they're not going to have the support, but right after the election. Mark my words. I hate to be right on this one, but so far everything I've called for, everything I've called for has happened, and it's happening. Why do I know that? Because I've educated myself in fascist. I'm kind of like a buff in that. You know, I'm an aficionado in that stuff. Not like I'm an aficionado of fascism, but learning about it, how it works. And we're about fascism. I think it has like 12 steps or 10 steps. We're at 8. It's just neat. One more election, quote unquote election, for that Insurrection Act to be activated. And then when that happens, they're gonna just do an Insurrection Act and the military take over the streets, and that's when the Democrats when the Republicans in the November 2026 election refuse to relinquish power. That's when we and the independents, Democrats, Republicans who are fed up with this shit, and they see what happens, we need to take to the streets and paralyze the United States peacefully and say, we're not going to work, we're not going to do shit. We're not going to do anything until those that lost the election are removed from power. And do it indefinitely until democracy is restored. Because if we don't do that, if we don't paralyze the United States after, when they do the last step of fascism, which is going to be in November 20, I don't see any other way around it. I don't see any way, because if not, it's over for democracy in the United States. You know, it's over. I hope the United States democracy survives if people don't take to the streets on November when the Republicans refuse to acknowledge their loss. We're going to have to do Vietnam level protests nationwide, massive, paralyzing economy, paralyzing country, paralyzing protests around this nation. 100 million people in the streets, like that type of protest. If we don't, it's over. It's over right now. It's over, but just, we're just still operating, even though tourism is destroyed, even though inflation is through the roof, even though we're still operating. November 2026, we have to wake up. We're in the middle of a neo-Nazi takeover of the United States.